thank you everyone for being here and joining us this afternoon. This meeting is about the Elevate PreK Collective Impact Pilot Project, and we just want to make sure we give some community updates on the work we've been doing to keep everybody informed. So just some quick introductions. My name is Rebecca Serzan. My title is Northern Arizona Regional Lead for Association for Supportive Childcare, and I am the project coordinator for Elevate PreK. And then Renee, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi all, I'm Renee Redday with Building Community, which is a social entrepreneurship focused on community engagement.
Thanks, Renee. And Paul, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Kolpinski. I'm the Partnership Director for Launch Flagstaff, and I'm just going to be in the background here facilitating, helping Renee and Rebecca in facilitating the meeting. So thanks for being here.
Very good. Thanks, all. All right. So we've allotted an hour and a half today, and I'd like to go just through a couple housekeeping items before we get started. So we have registered to attend this session, which is fantastic. We're not able to use the webinar format of Zoom. However, we'd like to keep up with the webinar format and make sure that participants stay muted for the entire meeting. The way we're going to collect information from you all and feedback, comments, and questions is going to be through the Padlet. So just so you know, you won't have to unmute and engage. If you need to send a message to the host, Paul will be watching that, but we're going to keep our conversations all on the Padlet. So that's the big thing there. Yeah. So the Padlet link, I put that in the chat bar again, and I'll put it in one more time. Oh my gosh, all that digging. I'm sure it'll stop digging in like 5 minutes when we're all in. But the Padlet link is a great platform for us to be able to save the comments, questions, next steps, and ideas that you all have for what's happening with Elevate PreK. So the Padlet will be used for gathering all of that. Click the plus sign. You don't need to log in or anything. You click the plus sign and you can type your comment right in there. You can put in your name or not. It's entirely up to you. It is set up for you to put in your name so you can see the comments. So the main goals of this presentation include sharing about the Elevate PreK strategy, where we are to date with implementing the strategy, and continuing to update the community and collect input on the needs of children and families. It's important to remember that it has taken years of conversation and collaboration to get to this point of implementing a 3-year pilot program. So regardless of our role or your role in the community, we can all assuredly agree that we share a vision that all children and families deserve equitable access to a high-quality education. We should always keep this vision in the center of our strategies. Community changes can be difficult, and we can always unite knowing that we can all share in the fact that we want what is best for our youngest community members. And then finally, we are going to be recording this meeting to make it available for replay and others in the community that cannot attend. Okay, so I'd like to dive into Elevate PreK. And if you are not familiar, it is a 3-year community-based pilot preschool expansion program that's designed to enhance Flagstaff's early childhood education system. So it's important to recognize the key principles driving this project. And I'd just like to take a moment to talk about, again, how we've gotten to this point of developing goals and strategies. So at the center of our work is equity. The pilot is intended to focus on children and families not accessing services or needing additional support systems. As groups came together to discuss what we could all agree on, we knew that the message was always around who is not thriving in our systems, and we can all agree on a common goal that all children and families deserve high-quality early learning services that is equitable and accessible within our community. Our vision is to consider our work from the perspective of children and families first and foremost, while planning for what the early childhood community could look like as a whole after the pilot program. So a collective impact framework is central to our work, and the last time we met actually, which feels like years ago, but was really, we talked about what collective impact means and the principles of that. But that was really born out of the work of Launch Flagstaff, which, as you know, aims to provide equitable access to a world-class education for every child. Launch Flagstaff believes that we have the resources, talent, and will in our community to improve educational outcomes for all. From the vision of Launch Flagstaff and the previous work of the Early Learning CAN, we have designed our pilot program with these things in mind. So we have continued to use this collective impact model to make sure that we hear from diverse voices. This includes family and business voice, as well as looking at the past conversations that have happened in the past 5 years of work in the CAN groups. Private and public partnerships are also allowing us to leverage current resources to address the gaps for children and families. By blending and braiding funding sources and resources, we are able to program design in a unique way that is independent of any one organization and keep us neutral from any existing program. We use decision-making. These data sets include information from the KDA assessments and Flagstaff, the Expect More Arizona benchmarks, and other community needs and assets reports specific to children and families. Our work involves getting feedback from diverse voices in the community. Time has been spent meeting with families, employees, teachers, and community partners to hear needs and wishes for how we serve children and family. We will continue to engage in feedback loops, just like this meeting, but also in different formats with the people that are most impacted by. So multiple, as you know probably by now, multiple partnerships and funding sources came together in August of 2019 for a strategic planning meeting. And the outcomes of this meeting identified 3 key goals for Elevate PreK. So the first goal is centered around high quality programming, establishing a high quality, full day, year-round preschool program that sets the gold standards for early education. The second goal is centered developed a streamlined system of supports that expands equitable access to high quality early learning, as well as the other supports families need to thrive. The third and final goal is around sustainability, developing a sustainable community-based system that includes and expands early learning services and supports. In your email, you probably saw this graphic, but it's a really helpful graphic in thinking about how we connect these goals to strategies. So it has been led by the Association for Supportive Childcare, or ASK, and if you're not familiar with me or the work we do, our mission is to champion children everywhere by providing resources and support to anyone who impacts children, helping every kid achieve the brightest outlook possible. So through this strategic plan, ASK has developed these goals into strategies for the pilot. Our first goal of quality targets children not accessing any early learning program by establishing pilot classrooms, increasing the amount of preschool seats available to families. And within the second goal of access, we have developed an early learning locator tool designed to help families find which early learning programs best fit their children's needs. In addition, a family partner will help facilitate the early learning locator service and act as a relationship-based navigator to additional family supports beyond early learning. In the third goal of sustainability, we have begun to consider how to build community support for all families by increasing coordination amongst social services to bring together the early learning systems. So the next few slides are going to dive more into these strategies and provide updates on where we are today with implementation. So I'm going to talk to you first about strategy 1, which is the Elevate PreK pilot classrooms. So on all of these goal slides, I've added a component about why, and I won't spend too much time digging back into the why because we've really already done that as a community through multiple layers, multiple forms of communication, but I think it's really important to go back of why we're doing being aware of why we've done this. You can see from the bullet points that there are still many children not being served, that there are not enough spots for children in our existing systems, and that children are not fully prepared for kindergarten upon entry. So therefore, our first strategy was focused on developing a high quality early learning pilot, implementing up to 5 classrooms to serve the population gap of children not accessing services. And I feel like in every meeting, like when I'm describing this, I use my hands, so I'm just going to pull out my hands again. So on this side, we have programs that have subsidies available for low-income families. It can be DES, it can be Head Start, it can be Quality First scholarships, it can be private scholarships. And we have families that can maybe access these. And then we have our full paying families on this side who are paying full tuition and can access living services. And then there's this gap in the middle. And that's really where these classrooms are targeted at. So we know what moves the needle for children as far as outcomes in kindergarten and long-term outcomes for early childhood education is having high quality program. It has to be high quality. So we really have crafted that in mind. I'll talk about that on the next slide. And again, I talked about this population gap. The pilot classrooms are designed to serve families waiting within the 101 to 250% of the currently not accessing any early learning services. Our early learning locator tool, which will be shown in a future slide, will help us identify families who meet this criteria. We will have the flexibility in our enrollment to be able to consider other circumstances for children, such as underserved populations, children with special needs, or others affected by inequalities. So in our classroom components, again, we went over this in the meeting in February, and I believe there are graphics that are going to be up on the website about sales. But again, our intent is to design a classroom with that high quality programming. The community definition of high quality early learning programs includes being a Head Start program, a national accredited program, or a quality first program rated at a 4 or 5 star level. And that was established before Elevate PreK became a strategy. We've spent a lot of time pulling research and data with our partners at Northern Arizona University to identify what key components should be built into classrooms. Full day year-round programming will be key in addressing equitable access for families. Highly qualified staff, evidence-based curricula will support in achieving high quality outcomes for children. Along with the pilot classrooms, there will be an evaluation study conducted by Northern Arizona University that will assess the effectiveness of the pilot program for children and families. And that will allow us to gather data on this community program that will influence long-term program design relevant to what works for children in programs in Flagstaff. Also continue to explore community partnerships that can support families and children not currently being served in our early learning systems. So where we're at today. As you may have expected, I don't know if you've heard of COVID, but that's recently a thing. And of course I joke, we've experienced delays in our launch because of COVID. We were slated to launch 2 classrooms in August. However, we are now ready to launch our first pilot classroom at Kinsey starting in January on FUSD's reopening plan. So to maintain the optimal health and safety guidelines, we will begin by serving up to 10 children in this classroom, and that aligns with the CDC guidance. We will be aligning with FUSD's school policies for operations as they prepare for their reopening plans. And because the classroom staff will be FUSD staff and it's in an FUSD facility, we'll continue to follow HR's recommendations on operations. We have job postings for the classroom staff posted this week, boarding and training in December, and we will be communicating what professional development resources and trainings can be offered to the broader community, and we'll keep communicating these opportunities as they come up. We're starting by doing outreach in the Kinsey area, knowing that this particular area has few public early learning programs nearby, and we'll expand our outreach to community partners who may be able to refer families. We're aiming to launch our second classroom at Thomas Elementary in the fall of 2021, again, pending COVID, and evaluation on the effectiveness of the program in January. But we will use this semester to practice data collection, knowing that the circumstances with COVID-19 may not give us an accurate snapshot of classroom practices. However, it will give us information about how we're conducting our evaluation, if those methods are effective or not. And then we're actively pursuing partners to identify the location of our third site in a community-based setting, again, knowing that this program is community-based. Okay, so again, if you have questions, comments, you can continue to post those on the Padlet. I am going to turn over presenting to Renee Redday. Her with Building Community has been the lead on the goal of access and is going to talk more about the Elevate Family Partner. So Renee.
Thank you. Yeah, again, so Renee and with building community, and really my focus is community engagement. So in association with Launch, I've been excited to support development of an Elevate family partner. So as early childhood professionals, we know that families in their are their child's first and most important teacher. So I'm excited to begin this work to impact the community. Elevate will support and engage families and work alongside community programs and organizations to align family support resources. So, you know, that's our big why, working with families, being informed by families, using those approaches internally and sharing what we learn through the community. So we know that there are a lot of resources that are in Flagstaff. However, many times families have difficulty accessing them, whether it be due to cost or lack of coordination. So this family partner strategy is a three-prong effort to try to address that. The three prongs are the early learning locator, a relationship-based family partner, and the Elevate Coordination Committee. So again, here are those three strategies. The early learning locator. So this idea is based on that there are a variety of programs that are in Flagstaff, early learning programs. There are some support systems that are in place to help families pay for those services. However, there's too many families in our community that, one, may not be aware of programs, and two, might not be aware of the resources. So knowing that was a key component to supporting families. Ask actually developed a pretty simplified database to help families know what programs that they might qualify for by income, whether it be Head Start, whether it be DES, whether it be Quality First through some private, for a private preschool, or whether it be Elevate. So it's a pretty simplified database. And if anyone is interested in running through that with me, I'm definitely open to that process to show folks. We'd like to try it out. We have tried it out with a few families, and it auto-populates for what support services they may qualify for. The other piece is that early learning locator, again, what's being built out is also a database that will track what families are asking for, what barriers might be in the way, what is driving their decision to either access a program or choose an alternate program. So we'll be maintaining that data to be able to use, again, internally, but also to inform community programs and partners. So that is a community-wide strategy and a database. We are still looking for exploring partnerships of where would be the best home and who could help us administer that early learning locator. But the tool is set up, and Rebecca and I are using that with families now. The family partner is will be based in Kinsey or wherever we have our preschools, similar to Head Start and similar to Parenting Arizona, knowing that there's a multiple of services that are out there for families, but oftentimes families don't know where to begin or have too many options to manage. And so having someone to help navigate services, to create a relationship with those families, and to help guide them through processes of accessing services that they need, that is the purpose of the family partner. And we are pretty excited that Parenting Arizona has already been housed at at Kinsey. Sorry, my daughter just walked into the room. So Parenting Arizona is at Kinsey, and they have agreed to share their services. They have a parent resource coordinator that is housed at Kinsey that will extend their services to newly enrolled Elevate PreK families. So we're excited about that partnership. And again, that's another way to have sustainability, asking folks who are already doing the work to share their service with a wider population. The other piece of the family partner building community will also be able to provide some family engagement PD to enrolled families on topics that they identify themselves as things that they'd like to explore. Also ensuring that family voice is heard and utilized regularly to develop practices and programming. And again, that information will be used first internally, but shared with the community as well. And the big one that maybe folks have heard about is the coordination committee. So the coordination committee started in July. This is a community-based, has a community-based focus. So families are invited as well as organizational leads to work together to look at our service alignment, family support service alignment. So again, like we said, we can be program rich, but infrastructure we may lack. So taking a bird's eye look of what that alignment looks like and asking for organizational leads to inform that, as well as families. So we are still outreaching for some families. I'd like to see an equal number of parents and organizations. So far, we're pretty equal. We're shy just a few families. We will do an outreach effort on CAF radio and try to attract some families that way. If some of you have families that might want to give voice to systems alignment, family support systems alignment, with building community, I have any parent that would like to be engaged, I have a way to engage them. Multiple hats, but many spots where they could plug in. Currently, what we've been doing is examining the family support services to identify what are common challenges. So showing just the landscape, the map of how families from needing a service to receiving a service, what are the steps that are involved, and asking families to give voice to what is challenging, and having a committee available to hear that feedback from families and to explore strategies. So we're excited to have that community conversation going that will be ongoing and growing. But each of these put families at the center in a way to try to align the services while also building relationships with families and hearing their voice. So like I said, where we are now, or where this component is at now, the Elevate Coordination Committee meets monthly. Typically, it is the third Thursday of the month. Holiday season will change that just a little bit, but if you're interested, please email me. Like I said, Rebecca Ask has created that early learning database, a simplified version that is also able to collect some data for us. We have received some calls from families and have piloted that with them to see how that tool works. Like I said, the purpose is to share with families all of their options that are available in the community. And then secondary, collecting that data on what programs families are choosing and why, or what barriers might be there to accessing services. So we're excited about that tool. And like I said, again, grateful for Parenting Arizona to share their parent resource coordinator with our Elevate families at Kinsey.
Anything else, Renee?
Well, I think I've touched on most of it. I guess I will give just one more, thanks for asking that, one more little piece around the Elevate Coordination Committee. Just to share that broader vision on what the whole coordination committee is all about. The vision that the group has developed is family support services in Flagstaff are equitable, efficient, and effective in responding to the diverse needs of families. So there's our vision. Just that hearing from families, how do we make this equitable, efficient, and effective? The mission, so the work of the committee itself, is to develop a streamlined system of supports that are informed by families and community leaders to increase access to family support services and high quality early learning in Flagstaff. So again, what we're doing and why we're doing it. And just the overall general theme of that is to increase sustainable alignment and coordination among Flagstaff family support services. So that's our why, that sustainable alignment and coordination. So these will be ongoing conversations that will be community-based with the purpose of aligning services in a way that makes sense to families while hearing the voice of leaders and programs that are those supports for families. And just one last thank you again for Parenting Arizona for stepping up and sharing your resource with our new community effort. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Great. Well, thanks, Renee. Appreciate it. Okay, so our third and final goal of Elevate PreK revolves around sustainability. And during the time of the pilot, we want to begin planning what a sustainable plan looks like for the early childhood community collaboration that can reach all families and children in Flagstaff. We know that we have a great variety of resources and programs, but like Renee mentioned, we may lack coordination like many systems do across the nation. We're not unique to that. And we want to be able to put data behind the work that is already happening in early childhood, and we'll use the pilot to be able to collect data on children and families being served and not being served. And Renee mentioned how that's going to be done through the early learning locator by hearing from families and being able to gather that input. That's going to tell us, that's going to give us information from our evaluation study of the pilot classrooms. That's going to give us information about what may work for Northern Arizona families. So those funding sources and program development are meant to benefit Flagstaff's early childhood community as a whole for the long-term vision. Therefore, we're beginning to take steps in how we approach our third goal of sustainability through this community collaboration. We've spending time on developing the pilot strategy, and we're now considering how to support community collaboration for anyone who works with young children and families. So we're doing this in a few different ways right now. We're doing this by working with the National League of Cities as a cohort with 4 other cities in Arizona that include Tempe, Mesa, Phoenix, and Tucson. And this cohort focuses on leveraging municipal policy alignment to improve equity for early childhood systems. And if you're like me, every time I read the words municipal policy alignment, I'm like, what does that mean? It really just means we're looking at how, as a city, we incorporate that in community. So the work for the National League of Cities includes professional development, collaborative meetings, and local cohort meetings focusing on goal development, focused on outcomes for children and families at the city level. And the unique thing about the National League of Cities is that is nationwide. There's 21 other cities participating, and it's really cool to hear from other cities how they have gone on this journey about incorporating children and families into their city work and what that looks like and how that's evolved. So it's been really helpful. Our goals in this work for Flagstaff and the state of Arizona, awareness and understanding of the importance of high quality early learning. So we know that educators and some specific populations recognize the long-term effects of high quality early learning. And I can imagine most of those people are in this room today. But this needs to expand to include our entire community. And that includes business leaders, political leaders, and anyone not familiar with the impacts of early learning. We continue to hear from community partners wanting to be involved in the work, and we will continue to identify local, state, and national resources to support our mission. We will highlight some of the partnerships in the next slide, but I do invite you to go to launchflagstaff.com if you haven't already to see a full list of community partners, because it is extensive and it has helped this work really come to where it is today. Finally, we see a need for a community-based early learning coalition. And we really hope to hear from participants today in the Padlet on what the benefits might be of having a coalition without duplicating any current efforts, as well as what the community thinks would be a good starting point for increased community collaboration for young children and families. So where we are now, I mentioned the National League of Cities. We're continuing to work with them and consider how we can support citywide initiatives for equity in early childhood. And John Saltonstall from the City of Flagstaff's Economic Development Department, he's working with us in this cohort, as well as Paul Kopinski from Launch Flagstaff. And we're really starting to think about this understanding and awareness component, as well as how the childcare components in community are linked to those business and economic development pieces that we may not always think about. We're also excited to announce the launch of Lowell Observatory's pre-K curriculum cohort, and that information is going to go out tomorrow at the latest. It should be on our website today. You'll also be getting an email, like I said, by tomorrow. And that's an opportunity for preschool programs to get access to a supplemental curriculum and professional development series developed by Lowell Observatory. And the goal of this one-year cohort is to provide an additional STEM education opportunities while assessing the effectiveness of the curriculum and professional development. The curriculum comes for free, the professional development comes for free. We'll have a small stipend available to allow for staff release time, and so we're really excited to offer that to the community. So information about this program will be available on our website, elevateprek.com, and will go out in an email this week. Also, there's work happening between Flagstaff High School's CTE program, Northern Arizona University, and Arizona PBS in thinking about how to streamline a pipeline of early childhood professionals through early childhood credentials. So the group has been meeting to consider how to leverage scholarship funding to provide college courses at the high school level, add an Associates of Early Childhood Education back at CCC, and have that associate's degree transfer smoothly into NAU's early childhood education degrees. The work here is intended to strengthen the pipeline of early childhood professionals for all programs in Flagstaff and Northern Arizona, I also want to mention in our work with the National League of Cities, we're exploring how to better partner with the business community on the importance and benefits of early childhood education that extend into their work. So John from the city is helping us develop ideas and consider how this early learning locator service can be a benefit to human resource departments, and how supporting employers with multiple childcare options and supports for families really can increase workforce engagement and community wellness. So we also now have a live website and email, so that's exciting. Information about the work of Elevate PreK, now at our website at elevateprek.com, you won't forget it. And contact information as far as accessing the early learning locator or just accessing us in any way as a team can go through our email, which is info@elevateprek.com. We're going to continue to put information and updates in the site as our work rolls out and evolves, and you can be able to look at those 3 goals and see how the work's panning out and be able to give input and really, again, just keep the community informed about what we're doing. So most importantly, we want to start thinking about the long-term vision for Team Early. Hope you're going to be able to contribute some thoughts and ideas today. We want to begin to think about the broader early childhood community and how this effort is supporting your work and how it can support your work in the future. Okay, so we've given you a plethora of information, plenty to think about, plenty to dig into. And again, if you hadn't heard this information before, it's going to be available on the website. If you've heard it at our February meeting, we just want to give updates on where we're at with the work. And we just want to take some time, questions and ideas for next step in collaboration. A main goal of this pilot program is really thinking about transparency and, again, collective impact, getting those community voices involved. So use the Padlet link if you haven't done so already. Paul will be reading from the Padlet for Renee and I and possibly Paul to respond to. And again, we'll be keeping the Padlet notes from our meeting, and hope this is a meaningful conversation board for this presentation. I'm going to stop sharing here, and you can see my face. You can tell that this is an important meeting to me because this is probably the first time I haven't worn a ponytail since March. But you can at least look at something a little bit different here. Well, I can either share the Padlet screen, or if you just want to fire out some questions of what we're seeing on there.
Yeah, so here's a question that pertains to transportation. And the question is, I've often heard that transportation is a variable in accessibility issues to programs and services like this. Has this been considered or looked into?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to share the Padlet right now. And Paul so politely told me that it's launchflagstaff.org, not .com. Make sure you go to the right spot if you're looking for those community partners and the bigger strategies. So, okay, so let me share the screen so you can see this. And just a couple comments, and people can please continue to post. Again, you just click on these plus signs here and add in a little comment. But transportation is a really great question, and it's a piece we have talked about as far as making sure we're really looking at what are the true barriers to accessing early learning services. What do those look like? And we won't take anything off the table because that's the goal. It's not to design the program for us, for families. So there have been conversations with the public transportation system about what that may look like as far as making sure families could have access to get their children to specifically the pilot sites. And then depending on where we end up with sustainable funding, that could be something we build into the model to make sure that we're able to address those transportation needs. One of the things we did include in the early learning locator tool is a question about transportation, of what kind of access do you have for transportation. So if most have had cars, but this is going to allow us to say, like, you know, I'm near a bus stop, and then we can start to map out, okay, here's the sites that are close to a bus stop. Here's the sites that are not close to a bus stop that that may meet my needs or may not meet my needs. Some people have mentioned, like, well, I'm an NAU student, so something close to NAU is actually better than close to my house. So it is a question we're being very intentional about asking to make sure we're getting the right information there.
So then there's the question about the family partner. And is the consultant bilingual to offer support for parents and families who are seeking support?
Yeah, so I can start answering this, and then I'll pass that over to Renee. We have anticipated potentially needing translation for some people needing services. And again, the goal here is to eliminate all barriers to whatever may be preventing a family to having equitable access. So for our first site at Kinsey, we know that a large part of the population that typically attends Kinsey identifies as Native American. There are some Spanish speakers. So we have prepared a list of community partners that may be able to help with this bilingual component. And then Renee, maybe you can talk about how we've considered that with the coordination committee for what you're doing for the larger community and how we're thinking about that.
Mm-hmm. So yes, so it would be a definite asset if I was a bilingual Spanish speaker. I am not, but I'm grateful that we do have community partners to support. So within the budget for the coordination committee, we did budget for not only for families to be paid for their time, but we also budgeted for translation. And we said we would arrange for that if we had families that were interested, and that would be supportive. So those that we have outreach to are aware that if they're outreaching to families, language does not need to be a barrier. We have identified some partners potentially over at NAU too. So even if there's a language other than English or Spanish, we have budgeted for be able to do that. Also, just with my building community business, I've definitely been reaching out for Spanish-speaking partners as well, those that are in the community and willing and interested to provide those translation services. I also know that through the school district as well, there are resources internal there that we can tap into to support monolingual Spanish-speaking families. And I'm a monolingual English-speaking person. I always identify when we have that. So just to say, it is something that we've considered. I don't necessarily have the skill, but we have started developing the partnerships and allocated the resources to be able to address that.
Yeah. And since Renee's talking about resources as well too, one of the things we incorporated in the committee, and gosh, Renee, I feel like, again, I'm back to too many C words. I can never remember what the committee's called, the coordination committee. Pieces we've also thought about, like, is if a family's participating and they need support with transportation getting to, we will provide support in doing that. If they need, when we go back to in-person services somewhere over the rainbow, whenever that happens, we will be, we want to think about childcare too as not being a barrier for a family to participate in thinking about how they want to make their community better. So we also have built in some supports in our budget for that as well too. Just again, really trying to dig into what the barriers would be. And one other piece I'll say before I get to the next comment on there too is one of the pieces I heard recently was really considering, especially with the demographics of Kinsey and who we might see in this classroom, is making sure that our classroom staff in the pilot classrooms look and feel like our community. And that's really important, especially when we're thinking about how children learn and how children construct meaning, and just making sure that the people at the table really represent the populations of people that are in our community, you know, first and foremost, going back to that equity piece.
Rebecca?
Yes.
I just wanted to touch a little bit on the collective impact process that we're using, and just reinforce the notion that as a collaborative, using the collective impact process, it's first about convening all of the subject matter experts, stakeholders, partners in this process to develop the strategy and the vision like we have already done. But then it's about how each of the organizations are owning the work and aligning their situation or their organizations or their resources in order to move toward that common goal through that collaboration. So just like CCCNY has mentioned here in terms of their commitment, these are the types of efforts that are going to be happening in the various organizations and the various political arenas, in other community arenas that we're facilitating from that broad perspective through the work of Launch Flagstaff that supports this process. So I just want to touch on that once we get to the visionary piece and identifying the strategies, the implementation actually happens in the community. And then we all get together again and look at, did we have an impact with that strategy? And then let's take it to the next level. So a little bit about that collective impact process and how important it is to have community engagement in the entire process, that this is not owned by Launch Flagstaff, it's not owned by any one organization, it's collaborative, it's shared by all of us, and we all have a stake in its success, and we all have a responsibility in facilitating that success. So I just wanted to point that out too.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think that's a really good point. which kind of leads into, the comment that is put up for development advocacy. So thank you for that. And I'll just read it. CCCAY can provide trauma-informed and mindful professional development. We can also push education policy advocacy out through our action and outreach committee. We also can provide info for families to connect to our webinars, et cetera, for education, awareness, and self-healing community work. Yeah, Virginia at CCCY and Renee and I have had conversations about how this work overlaps and how we can best leverage our resources. And we know they've already been working with the school district on providing those trainings on trauma-informed care. We know that's going to be a component that's critical to child and family success and the outcomes we want. So I really appreciate that. So thank you.
And I'll say one other piece too. I mean, just to push again with building community and the relationship with the coalition. I do think that the coalition has a lot of tools and resources that are available on their website, or for small groups or for your organization, that really do help develop a common language among all of us as far as some of these factors that are really have a negative impact on educational outcomes. So there's a lot of collective work that is happening, and I do think the tools that are provided by the coalition give us that foundational language so we can all talk with each other in a way and have similar understandings.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Renee. Okay, so I see a question here about, has CCC offered a time frame to introduce the early childhood program, and if not, what are the obstacles? So I will do the best I can to answer that question, being in those meetings that have happened. So Coconino Community College, before we put more C words in there, has already reinstated their early childhood program. Benjamin Behunin is actually the faculty member in charge of that early childhood program. So that has been reinstated in the past year, and they're continuing to operate classes. What we've done in the work is begin to think about this, making sure that this pipeline of people, even at the post-secondary or the secondary level in high school, are starting to think about, I want to do something in education, or maybe I want to do something with children and families. And we're able to start thinking about what that pathway looks like. And so, we also know that there's funding sources available right now for early childhood professionals to be able to get either a CDA or an associate's, or in some cases, a bachelor's degree in early childhood education. And so we need to be leveraging those funds. We need to be leveraging this, that we know we're going to be able to expand to a wide audience. And so part of the work that CCC is doing right now is with their current program, which I believe is a certificate of completion or aligned to a CDA, is to be able to reinstate the associates program. And they are on track and think that could possibly be approved by the end of the year. Again, I don't want to hold the fire to anyone. That was last what we discussed in the meeting, which is great news because our CCC and NAU we're all in the same room talking about Team Early Childhood again. About how that aligns and what that looks like for a pathway, because we know there can be confusion about what does this really look like along the pathways. And even going back to the secondary education piece, we have a child development class at Flag High, and we want to be able to go back to now having that as part of the CCC pathway and being able to earn college credit then and there. So that way they're already setting up that pathline for CCC if they want to do that. And they could potentially even that exist through Pathways Scholarship, through the First Things First Workforce Registry Scholarship. If you are a Head Start staff member, there's funds available for that. We know the gosh, I can't think of what it is. I want to say it's ATA. It's the new teachers scholarships available for educators to stay in Arizona. That extends through early childhood education. So we really need to be looking at what that all makes sense of what that all looks like together. So. Yeah, and I see the comment here too, high school through the university. So really making sure it just makes sense. It's a good pathway, and not just one entry point, but really thinking about what works for students and making sure that works. And how do we keep that talent in Flagstaff? Because we know, I've been doing this work for plenty of time to know that anytime I meet with our local childcare or early care and education directors, the number one topic I hear about is staffing. And there's a few components for that. We know that it is really tough, and it's even worse in the early childhood sector. But it's really hard. It's not, this will sound really obvious to everyone, but it's not the same as walking into a fast food restaurant and starting a job. Like, you are working with human beings and children. And so we really need to make sure people who are passionate about children and that they're able to be successful in the classroom. We're giving them the tools they need to succeed, and we're supporting them as people who are then able to support the children and families and the work they're doing with their employer. Yes, speaking about the Arizona Teachers Academy, thank you. Yeah, and I apologize that all of these are coming up anonymous. I have the settings for names, but you know, we're all working in this new technology field, and maybe that just didn't pan out. So yes. So back to high school, CCC, University, and AU. Those of us working on this site are embedding the CDA components in the high school portion. That again transfers to CCC or is the dual credit. Yeah, that's perfect. I appreciate you. I feel like I'm a TV reporter here, reading in real time things. So
Rebecca, can you speak to the Arizona Teachers Academy?
Probably not. I will give a very, I will give a very short thing, and then maybe whoever's typing about the Teachers Academy can also add some information, because that would be the best case scenario. But currently in Arizona, to address the teacher shortage across the board, there is funding available for people to get a bachelor's in education, and that's not only in the K-12 system, but that's in early childhood education as well too, which we know. And when I say early childhood education, for anybody who's in the field, we know this technically goes birth to age 8, and that's really important to keep in mind too. Obviously we have the pilot classrooms component, and we're thinking about families with young children, but when we're talking about early childhood, it is birth to age 8. That funding is available. I would say reach out to Northern Arizona East, the other universities in the state would have information. It's on their website. I was able to pull it up really quickly to make sure early childhood education was listed in there. Oh, look, thanks for the link. Perfect. Good work. I'm going to guess it's Pam. It's my good friend Pam who's going to put that information in there. But yeah, that's available for people. And again, it's a great resource to think about this pipeline of educators we need in Arizona.
Pam, would you like to speak to this directly? You can unmute if you'd like.
You can unmute if you want, Pam.
How'd you know it was me? I did write my name up there. So the early childhood degree that qualifies at the undergraduate level for the Arizona Teachers Academy is our unified degree, which is special education and early childhood special education and early childhood education. Also the BSED elementary with certificate leading to endorsement in early childhood, and then at the master's level, any certificate, those are both certification degrees. So only the certification degrees qualify for the Arizona Teachers Academy at NAU. And at the master's level, there are several special education early childhood degrees that will qualify for the Arizona Teachers Academy. If anybody is wanting to apply for the Teachers Academy, my advice would be to get in there early because the funds are limited. And this will take you to NAU's, which I think also has links to the state at large, the ADE site.
And if you're interested in learning about other funding sources in early childhood, certainly you can send an email to the info@elevateprek.com, and I can connect you to the variety of pathways that we have available there. So I do want one more component that has been on my mind as I have done this work, and that is, again, the transparency about the project, but just what this means for the early childhood community at large. And it, you know, probably from the get-go, especially when some of the people that I've worked with for years, frankly, you know, heard about this project, there was this initial fear about these pilot classrooms and what does this mean for my program? And the first thing we tend to do as humans is, what does this mean for me? You know, what does this mean for my program? And hopefully having these discussions really just paints a picture about what we're trying to do for children and families that aren't having access. And along this pilot process, we really hope to gain feedback and information from you all about what are our next steps. What do we do to better come together and really think about, you know, not staying in our silos, but working together to serve all children and families, because every program right now has a place in our community to continue to support them. And pieces that we're putting together that we've developed intentionally in the strategy are meant to benefit everyone in the community. So we talked about the collaboration for the early childhood professionals. That benefits all early childhood programs in the community. When we talk about the early learning locator and really listening to families and helping them navigate which programs they could qualify for, or which program would be a good fit, that's for everyone. You know, all the way down to the running the Lowell Observatory curriculum. I'm just, again, impressed with how community partners come to the table and say, how can we work together to do this? And here's what we can offer, and here's what we can leverage. And I truly hope in this work that we continue to get relevant feedback from everyone and really start thinking about the long-term pieces of what this could really look like for the community, because it's exciting. We're forging a new path, and without getting more long-winded about it, that's a piece I just want to make sure I put out to everyone here today. And just your feedback is valuable. If you feel like we're missing a piece of your feedback, you've got my email, you've got my cell phone. You can reach out to Paul or Renee or really anyone doing this work. And I'm happy to, anytime I hear like a concern, like the first thing I'm doing is reaching out and saying, hey, let's talk about it. Part of this work in the pilot is being able to rapidly develop something, test out something, and then if it's not working or there's a factor we haven't thought about, like quickly being able to rapidly change it and test it out, and being able to do this so when we get to the end line, we have some really good information about our community. So I'll stop getting long-winded about that.
Here's a question. Are you hiring only certified teachers?
Excellent question. In our research digs about what is working and what's effective for child outcomes is that we know that teachers that have bachelors in early childhood education are going to be more effective at implementing an evidence-based curricula and are directly tied to child outcomes. So for sure, our lead teachers will have that requirement of having a bachelor's. Now, the question about certified teachers is a little tricky. There's not enough research really out there to distinguish between someone with a bachelor's in early childhood education versus someone who has certification in early childhood education as far as like a teaching degree. And so the first two pilot classrooms, because the preference is for a certified teacher because that is aligned with FUSD's certified teacher pay and HR protocol and policies. I believe there's a little bit of wiggle room that if you have your bachelor's in early childhood education, there are supports we can provide to get you certified. But that is the intent, is that that position essentially leads to certified. And again, that's within the FUSD hiring. When we do classroom 3, depending on who that community partner is, I don't know that there will necessarily be a requirement for a teacher certification per se. But we are really trying to demonstrate that this is what children and families deserve, is people that have the appropriate experience and the appropriate training to be able to implement that TLC we want for children and those evidence-based practices. And just to piggyback off that a little bit more, the assistant teachers, right now we have the job descriptions listed as kind of a blend. A preference would be that you have some college coursework in early childhood education. It could be a blend of professional development and training in early childhood education, as well as some experience, again, working with children. I believe we have that at least at a year. I think the preference is closer to 2 or 3 years out. So that's where we're landing there. Paul or Renee, do you have anything else to add? And again, if you have comments, this will be up and available, so you can use this link anytime.
I do. I wrote down a couple of things I wanted to remember to say. I mean, one, just, thank you all for participating. What is it? 44 members here. So folks interested, for one, to hear what's going on, and 2, willing to participate in the conversation. Just want to say thank you for that. And just want to keep that going. So I feel like I haven't shared my email, so I can tell it to you. My email is renee@buildingcommunityflagstaff.com. Like I said, in my community work here, I'm outreaching for families or others that may be willing to engage in community conversations. There's several that are happening. If anyone has a parent that is looking for childcare, we have that early learning locator, so send them our way and we'll run through that with them. I feel like I'm doing a commercial now, but I mean, thank you for those that have already contributed to the project, from steering committees to community members to each of you for being here, to FUSD for contributing resources, NAU for their evaluation, Parenting Arizona for the family partner piece and the relationship based, CCC&Y for offering trainings and having that resource base for us. So a lot of thank yous. And so just definitely another encouragement to stay engaged, and that the communication is meant to be reciprocal back and forth. Feel free to use that email. If I can't answer that a question for you, I'll direct it to either Paul or Rebecca, whoever would be best. Like I said, send the families our way. And if you have any emails, just know that it's meant to be a reciprocal conversation. So we welcome some back and forth, and I'll answer best I can or refer you to the right person who can. But I just appreciate each one of you for joining in the conversation and making sure that it is a long-term conversation that we'll keep revisiting and having it come back and forth. So thank you all for being here.
Well, thanks all. I'll hang out for just a second or two more. Again, if you want to pass off anything on the Padlet, we'll be keeping that information. And yeah, we're grateful for the continuing of community support and community voices. So thanks again. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll be in touch.